Imaging finding a rare coin so rare it could pay off your house today, we're diving into 10 of the most valuable US coins ever found. Real coins worth hundreds and even millions of dollars or more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next rare find. Let's start this.
Picture this for a moment. Somewhere in America, a single quarter, yes, the same 25-cent coin you might have tossed into a cup holder, quietly changed hands for a price that could buy a luxury home. And here's the uncomfortable question that should stop you cold right now: what if the most valuable coin you'll ever own is already sitting in your house, unnoticed, underestimated, and dangerously close to being spent? This is not a fairy tale. This is the story of the 1965 Washington quarter with no mint mark, a coin born at one of the most chaotic turning points in U.S. monetary history. In 1965, America abandoned silver coinage almost overnight. Mints were under pressure, dies were reused, metals were mixed, and mistakes slipped through. That chaos created legends. And legends create wealth. Some of these quarters, especially rare error examples struck on silver planchets or showing dramatic mint anomalies, have become some of the most aggressively hunted modern U.S. coins in existence. Now here's where the pulse quickens. Most people think no mint mark means nothing. In reality, for this specific year, it can mean everything. Philadelphia struck millions, but a microscopic fraction escaped with errors so rare they've become trophy pieces for elite collectors. Transitional errors, off-metal strikes, and extraordinary die mistakes have driven bidding wars that feel more like Wall Street than a coin show. In hushed auction conversations, numbers have surfaced that make people laugh nervously, until they realize the sale was real. A reported value whispered around $743,000 has turned this quarter into a modern American myth with teeth. Let me pause you right here with a quick reset. Be honest, when was the last time you actually looked at a quarter before spending it? Exactly. That little laugh you just had. That's the sound of opportunity slipping by unnoticed. Collectors don't laugh. They examine, authenticate, and act while everyone else scrolls past. This brings us to the deeper truth most people never hear. Wealth from rare coins doesn't come from luck. It comes from awareness and timing. The demand for verified error coins is exploding as high-net-worth collectors move away from volatile assets and into tangible history. These buyers aren't emotional spenders. They're strategic, patient, and decisive. When a true 1965 era quarter appears, competition is fierce and hesitation is punished. Miss one, and you may never see another like it again in your lifetime, and here's where fear quietly enters the room. Every year, irreplaceable coins are lost forever, spent, damaged, cleaned, or dumped into bulk lots because someone didn't recognize what they had. Imagine discovering too late that the coin you used for parking yesterday could have funded a completely different life. That's not drama. That's reality in the coin market, but excitement lives right beside that fear, because the opposite is also true. One careful inspection. One professional grading. One informed decision. That's all that separates regret from transformation. People who win in this space don't rush blindly, but they don't delay either. They understand that rarity plus demand plus timing equals leverage, and leverage builds wealth. So if you're watching this and you own old US coins, especially mid-1960s quarters, the clock is already ticking. Interest is high. Buyers are active. The market is rewarding those who act from knowledge, not doubt. This isn't about chasing fantasies. It's about recognizing that history, when authenticated and positioned correctly. Imagine this for just a second. You're holding a simple Washington quarter in your hand. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. You might even be tempted to toss it into a jar with loose change, the kind that sits untouched for years. But what if I told you that one specific 1978 Washington quarter with no mint mark has quietly crossed into the world of elite collectors, and in today's market, the right error version has reached values reported as high as $753,000. Yes, you heard that correctly. A quarter. Not a stock. Not real estate. A single coin. And here's the uncomfortable question that should already be racing through your mind: what if you've already had one, and never knew it? Now before you laugh and say, "That can't be real," let me stop you right there. Because that exact reaction, the disbelief, the shrug, the nervous chuckle, is the reason life-changing coins slip through people's fingers every single day. And let's be honest, most people only start paying attention after it's too late. Don't let that be you. This story isn't about fantasy. It's about rarity, mistakes, timing, and the quiet power of knowledge. And yes, there's a reason serious collectors are watching the 1978 no-mint Mark Washington quarter with intense focus right now. In 1978, Washington quarters were minted in massive quantities. Philadelphia struck millions, and because Philadelphia coins traditionally carried no mint mark, nobody gave them a second glance. They were spenders. Grocery money. Parking meters. Arcade tokens for kids who didn't know history was slipping through their hands. And that's exactly how valuable coins are born, hidden in plain sight, dismissed as common, underestimated for decades. But here's the twist. Within those millions of quarters, a tiny number escaped the mint with critical errors, errors that were never meant to leave the building. We're talking about striking anomalies, die issues, planchet problems, and subtle but devastating minting flaws that transformed a 25-cent coin into a six-figure artifact. Think of it like a misprinted $1 million bill. Same paper. Same ink. Completely different value, and here's where fear quietly creeps in. Because the longer you ignore your old coins, the greater the chance that a rare one gets spent, lost, or damaged forever. Coins don't announce their value. They wait. And they reward only those who pay attention. Quick question, just to reset your focus for a second: when was the last time you actually looked at a quarter before spending it? Exactly. Act2, the discovery, why this coin is in demand right now. What separates the ordinary 1978 quarter from the extraordinary is not luck, it's condition, error type, and timing. High-grade examples with confirmed mint errors have become magnets for elite collectors, auction houses, and investors who understand one simple truth: rare coins are finite. No new 1978 quarters are ever being made again. Every year, fewer survive in collectible condition. Supply shrinks. Demand rises. Prices respond. Now add one more layer. We are living in a time where tangible assets are back in favor. Inflation has made people nervous. Digital investments feel abstract. But a rare US coin. That's history you can hold. That's wealth with weight. And when a specific coin, like the 1978 no-mint Mark Washington quarter with a documented error, enters the spotlight, competition becomes fierce. Collectors don't hesitate. They act. This is where excitement takes over. Because people are discovering that valuable coins aren't always ancient or gold. Sometimes they're hiding in desk drawers, old coffee cans, inherited collections, or forgotten rolls from the bank. And when one surfaces in exceptional condition, the market reacts fast. The difference between selling at the right moment and waiting too long can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars, and yes, this is the part where most people say, "I'll check later." Later becomes never. Never becomes regret. Here's the truth, delivered plainly and without sugarcoating. Wealth doesn't always come from earning more. Sometimes it comes from recognizing what you already have. If you or your family have old US coins, quarters, pennies, dimes, especially from the 1960s, 70s, or earlier, you are sitting on unanswered questions. And unanswered questions in the coin world can be very expensive. The 1978 no-mint Mark Washington quarter has become a symbol of that reality. It represents the idea that ordinary objects can become extraordinary under the right conditions. And right now, demand is driven by collectors who are not emotional, they are strategic. They understand rarity cycles. They know when to buy. And they know when to pay aggressively. Let me add a little humor before we finish, because this part matters. People will spend hours researching which phone to buy, but won't spend 5 minutes checking a coin that could change their financial story. Don't be that person. The opportunity here is not about chasing hype. It's about awareness. It's about action. It's about understanding that the market rewards those who move before the crowd, not after. Whether you're looking to sell, evaluate, or simply protect what you own, knowledge is your advantage, and hesitation is your enemy. So the next time a quarter rests in your palm, pause. Look closer. Because hidden inside the most overlooked coins in America are stories of mistakes, rarity, and massive value. And the difference between someone who dreams of wealth and someone who lives it, is often a single decision made at the right moment. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a single quarter, yes, a 25-cent coin, sits quietly in a drawer, a coffee can, or a forgotten jar. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, if the owner truly knew what they were holding, their entire financial outlook could change in a single afternoon. What if I told you that a 1980 Washington quarter, the kind millions of Americans handled without a second thought, has been confirmed in elite collector circles to command values as high as $465,000? And here's the unsettling part, most people who own it don't even realize it. They've already spent similar coins on parking meters, vending machines, or morning coffee. If you've ever casually dropped a quarter into a slot and thought nothing of it, stay with me. This may be the most expensive habit you never knew you had. This story begins not with wealth, but with ignorance. In 1980, the Philadelphia Mint produced millions of Washington quarters, flooding everyday circulation. To the untrained eye, every one of them looks the same. And that's exactly why the most valuable examples slipped past unnoticed. Hidden among ordinary coins were rare minting errors, mistakes so subtle that only seasoned collectors and grading experts recognized their explosive value decades later. This is where fear quietly enters the room, because the difference between a 25-cent coin and a six-figure asset can be something smaller than a grain of sand. Slight misalignments. Striking anomalies. Metal composition irregularities. Errors the mint never intended, but collectors now aggressively hunt for. And once they're discovered, they're never coming back into circulation again. Now let's pause for a moment, quick reality check. When was the last time you actually looked at your quarters? Not glanced. Looked. Most people treat coins like loose change, background noise to daily life. Funny how the smallest objects often hold the biggest surprises, isn't it? We search for opportunity everywhere, stocks, real estate, side hustles, while a quarter that could pay off a mortgage sits ignored in a kitchen drawer. Irony has a sense of humor like that. As awareness grew inside the numismatic world, demand exploded. Elite collectors, private investors, and auction houses began competing fiercely for authenticated 1980 era quarters. These coins are not just rare, they are finite. No more will ever be made. Every time one is graded, encapsulated, and placed into a permanent collection, the supply shrinks further. Scarcity fuels desire. Desire fuels price. And price fuels urgency. This is why serious buyers move fast and pay aggressively. When one of these quarters appears at auction, phones light up, bids climb rapidly, and hesitation disappears. Because in high-end coin markets, hesitation costs money. Here's where excitement takes over. A single discovery can transform ordinary life into extraordinary opportunity. Many sellers didn't start as experts. They were everyday Americans who inherited a jar of coins, cleaned out an old drawer, or decided, almost by accident, to have a coin evaluated. And suddenly, the narrative of their life shifted. Retirement accelerated. Debt vanished. Options expanded. This is not about luck. This is about awareness meeting action at the right moment. And right now, awareness is spreading faster than ever. Let's be honest for a second, if someone offered you $465,000 for something you already owned, wouldn't you want to know? Of course you would. That's human nature. And yet, many people delay, thinking, I'll check later. Later becomes next year. Next year becomes never. Meanwhile, market demand doesn't wait. Collectors don't pause. They move decisively, because they understand cycles. They know that once mainstream attention catches up, the quiet advantage disappears. The people who win are the ones who act before everyone else does. Now we enter the final act of this story, the moment of choice. You can continue seeing coins as spare change, or you can start seeing them as what they truly are, historical financial instruments hiding in plain sight. The 1980 P. Washington quarter era represents more than money. It represents leverage. It represents the idea that wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sits patiently, waiting for someone perceptive enough to recognize its value. And here's the most empowering truth of all: this opportunity is not limited to museums or millionaires. It belongs to anyone willing to pay attention. Anyone willing to check their coins. Anyone willing to step into a higher level of financial awareness. The demand is real. The prices are real. And the window is narrowing. Because once these quarters are locked into private collections, they are gone for good. So before you dismiss that old change jar, before you roll those quarters and cash them in, ask yourself a simple question: what if the most valuable asset you own is the one you've been ignoring? Sometimes, wealth doesn't come from chasing the future. Sometimes, it comes from finally understanding the past, and acting on it while others still aren't paying attention. What if I told you that a single quarter, yes, the same 25 cents hiding in an old jar, glove box, or inherited collection, could be the quiet key to a life-changing payday? Pause for a second, because the 1981 P. Washington quarter is not just spare change. It's a sleeper. A coin most people ignored, spent, and forgot, while a rare era variety from this exact year has ignited intense demand among elite collectors, with top-tier examples reportedly reaching values as high as $745,000. Now here's the uncomfortable question: what if you already owned one and didn't know it? That thought should feel exciting, and a little terrifying. Because opportunity doesn't knock loudly, it whispers, and then it's gone. Let's be honest for a moment. America has spent decades rushing past small things. Pennies, quarters, nickels, dismissed as clutter. But history rewards the patient, not the careless. The most powerful wealth stories don't begin with lottery tickets. They begin with knowledge. And today, knowledge is your unfair advantage. If you've ever wondered whether old coins could unlock a more secure, more abundant lifestyle, you're in exactly the right place. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again, and you may feel an urgency to check what you already own. The year 1981 was a turning point for U.S. coinage. Economic pressure, changing mint processes, and tighter production schedules created the perfect storm for mistakes. And when mistakes happen at the U.S. Mint, collectors pay attention. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by the P, released Washington quarters that year that appeared ordinary at first glance. But hidden among them were rare and dramatic mint errors, striking anomalies so distinct, so visually undeniable, that they instantly separated themselves from everyday coins. This is where excitement builds. Certain 1981 P quarters exhibit extreme off-center strikes, double dies, misaligned dies, and other production errors that transform them from currency into artifacts. These are not tiny flaws you need a microscope to imagine. These are bold, unmistakable errors, the kind that make a professional dealer sit up straight and smile. And when these coins appear in exceptional condition, untouched by circulation, competition among collectors becomes fierce. That's how four-figure finds become six-figure headlines. That's how coins quietly climb into the realm of serious wealth. Here's the humorous part, because history loves irony. Millions of Americans once used these quarters to buy coffee, soda, or parking meters. Somewhere out there, someone unknowingly paid for a sandwich with a coin that could have bought the entire cafe. Funny? Yes. Painful? Absolutely. And this is where urgency steps in. Every year, more of these rare era quarters are lost forever to circulation damage. The supply shrinks. Demand grows. Prices don't politely wait. Now let's connect the dots, because this is not just about a coin. This is about timing. The rare coin market is driven by scarcity, condition, and story. The 1981 P. Washington quarter era has all three. Collectors in the United States, especially those focused on modern-era mint errors, are aggressively searching for high-grade examples. Auction houses, private buyers, and investment-minded collectors understand one truth very clearly: once the best specimens are locked into collections, they rarely come back out. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you carefully checked your old quarters? Not glanced at them. Checked them. Because wealth doesn't announce itself. It waits to be recognized. And the people who act first are the ones who benefit most. This is not fear meant to paralyze you, it's fear meant to motivate you. The fear of missing what others are already capitalizing on. The excitement of realizing that your next financial breakthrough may already be in your possession. So here's your moment. Your pause. Your pattern interrupt. If a single quarter could change someone's financial trajectory, why not yours? The difference between those who profit and those who regret is simple: action. Knowledge turns curiosity into confidence. Confidence turns objects into assets. And assets, when demand is high, create leverage. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a simple Washington quarter in your hand. It feels ordinary. It looks ordinary. You've probably spent dozens just like it without a second thought. Now pause right there, because what if I told you that one very specific quarter, the 1983 D. Washington quarter, has stunned collectors, shaken the coin market, and has been linked to values reaching as high as $435,000. Yes, a single quarter. 25 cents. If that didn't just snap your attention awake, let me ask you something uncomfortable. How many coins have already slipped through your fingers that could have changed your financial future forever? This is not a story about luck. This is a story about awareness, timing, and knowing what others overlook. Welcome to a hidden side of American wealth that most people never see. While the average person chases quick money, seasoned collectors quietly hunt for mint errors, rare conditions, and forgotten treasures hiding in plain sight. The 1983 D. Washington quarter sits at the center of this silent gold rush. Produced during a turbulent period in U.S. minting history, this coin was struck when quality control standards were quietly shifting. Errors slipped through. Mistakes escaped. And today, those mistakes are worth more than most people's homes. If you're thinking, that can't be real, good, skepticism is healthy. But disbelief is exactly why these coins remain undiscovered in drawers, jars, and old collections across America. Now here's where the story truly begins. In 1983, the Denver Mint released millions of Washington quarters, but something unusual happened behind the scenes. This was one of the first years when mint sets were not officially produced, meaning fewer high-quality examples were preserved. Combine that with striking errors, off-metal strikes, missing clad layers, double dies, misaligned strikes, and suddenly you have a perfect storm for rarity. And rarity is the foundation of demand. Collectors don't chase what's common. They chase what almost never should have existed. And the 1983 D quarter errors fall directly into that category. Let's interrupt the flow for just a second. Quick question. Have you ever tossed change into a cup holder without looking at it? Of course you have. We all have. That casual moment, that tiny decision, is exactly how six-figure coins disappear every single day. It sounds almost funny, doesn't it? A quarter worth more than a luxury car riding around next to old receipts and dust. But that irony is exactly what makes this market so powerful, and so unforgiving to those who ignore it. As demand for rare U.S. error coins continues to surge, serious buyers are paying unprecedented prices. Wealthy collectors, private investors, and auction houses compete aggressively for top-grade error quarters, especially from the early 1980s. Why? Because supply is fixed. No more 1983 D quarters will ever be made. And once a rare error is locked into a private collection, it often disappears from the market for decades. That scarcity creates urgency. That urgency drives prices higher. And that momentum is why stories of six-figure sales continue to circulate, stunning those who never imagined a quarter could outperform stocks, gold, or even real estate. Now we move into the heart of this story, the emotional shift. This isn't just about money. It's about control. It's about realizing that wealth doesn't always come from working harder, but from seeing smarter. For many Americans between the ages of 30 and 65, coins represent nostalgia, old jars, inherited collections, childhood memories. But nostalgia becomes power when paired with knowledge. That old collection sitting quietly in a drawer. It's not a memory. It's an opportunity. And opportunities don't announce themselves loudly. They whisper. Here's another pattern break, ready? If quarters could talk, most of them would beg you not to spend them. Because the difference between 25 cents and hundreds of thousands of dollars is not magic. It's inspection. It's condition. It's error recognition. And it's knowing when to act. Fear enters here, not the kind that paralyzes, but the kind that sharpens focus. The fear of missing out. The fear of having already owned something life-changing and never realizing it. That fear is uncomfortable, but it's also fuel. As we move toward the final act, everything connects. The rising demand. The limited supply. The overlooked nature of error coins. The growing number of Americans seeking alternative paths to wealth. This is why the 1983 D. Washington quarter error has become a symbol in the collector world, not just of rarity, but of awakening. People are no longer laughing at coin collecting. They're studying it. They're funding it. They're building legacies from it, and here's the truth that separates observers from winners. The market does not reward hesitation. Coins in pristine condition, authenticated and graded, are commanding attention now, not later. Every year more coins are damaged, lost, or spent. Every year fewer remain. The window does not slam shut dramatically. It closes quietly. One drawer emptied. One estate sale overlooked. One coin spent on coffee. So if you're listening to this right now, understand this message clearly. Wealth does not always look like a business suit or a stock chart. Sometimes it looks like a quarter you've seen 1,000 times. The difference is whether you look again, this time with purpose. The 1983 D. Washington quarter is not just a coin. It's a reminder that opportunity favors those who pay attention. And in a world where most people are distracted, attention is the most valuable currency of all. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a single quarter sits quietly in a drawer, a coffee can, or the bottom of a glove compartment. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, to the trained eye, it carries a hidden flaw so rare, so powerful, that collectors have valued examples like it as high as $436,000. One quarter. Not a lottery ticket. Not a risky investment. Just 25 cents that slipped through history unnoticed. And here's the uncomfortable question that stops people cold: what if you've already touched it, spent it, or ignored it without ever knowing what it was worth? This is not a story about luck. It's a story about awareness. Today, we're uncovering the 1987 D. Washington quarter error coin, a modern-era anomaly from the Denver Mint that has ignited intense demand among elite collectors. And if you've ever searched old pennies, quarters, or jars of change with the hope of financial freedom, this video is for you. Stay with me, because the difference between ordinary pocket change and life-changing wealth often comes down to what others fail to notice. Act 1 begins in 1987, a year most people remember for pop music, Wall Street ambition, and American confidence. The U.S. Mint was producing millions of Washington quarters at the Denver Mint, marked with a simple D. Everything seemed routine. But history teaches us a quiet truth: the most valuable errors are born during moments of normalcy. When machines run non-stop, when human oversight relaxes just enough, metal tells a different story. In 1987, a small number of quarters escaped the mint carrying dramatic minting errors that should never have existed. And those coins were released into circulation, blending perfectly into everyday life. Here's where the tension tightens. Most people assume modern coins can't be valuable. They think, it's not ancient, it's not gold, it's not even silver. That belief has cost Americans millions. The 1987 Washington quarter shattered that myth. Certain error varieties, including extreme off-center strikes, missing clad layers, dramatic double dies, and rare transitional planchet errors, became unicorns of modern coin collecting. When authenticated and preserved in high condition, these errors triggered bidding wars that stunned even seasoned professionals. This is how a quarter crosses the line from pocket change into six-figure territory. Now pause for a second and ask yourself something slightly uncomfortable, but important. How many quarters have passed through your hands since 1987? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Did you ever look closely, or did you assume value only comes from what's obvious? This is where fear quietly enters the story. Fear of missing out. Fear that the coin you spent on parking could have paid off your mortgage. Fear that opportunity doesn't announce itself with flashing lights. It whispers, then disappears. Act 2 is where the awakening happens. Collectors don't chase hype, they chase anomalies. The demand for verified 1987 quarter errors is driven by scarcity, not speculation. These coins are aggressively sought after because modern error coins are far harder to find in pristine condition. Most were spent, damaged, or lost before anyone knew to look. That shrinking supply collides with a growing wave of collectors who understand something powerful: modern U.S. errors represent the last frontier of affordable discovery. Or at least, they were affordable before stories like this reached the public. Here's a pattern interrupt for you. Be honest. If I handed you a quarter right now, would you even glance at it before spending it? Or would you say, it's just a quarter, and move on with your day? That casual dismissal is exactly why these coins explode in value. Wealth doesn't always reward the smartest person in the room. It rewards the most attentive. The excitement builds when you realize this isn't about owning millions of coins. It's about recognizing one. Serious buyers are not scrolling through coin jars hoping for luck. They are paying top dollar for authenticated examples because they understand leverage. One verified error coin can outperform years of traditional saving. That's why the market remains hot. That's why auctions attract fierce competition. And that's why time matters. As awareness grows, the number of undiscovered examples shrinks. Urgency isn't marketing hype here. It's simple math. Act 3 is where possibility turns into action. Right now, somewhere in America, someone is unknowingly closer to a breakthrough than they've ever been. The 1987 Washington quarter era represents more than money. It represents a shift in mindset. From consumer to collector. From spender to spotter of opportunity. From hoping for wealth to recognizing it in plain sight. This is why people who once searched pennies now expand their vision to quarters, nickels, and dimes. Value leaves clues, and the trained eye follows them. There's a quiet confidence that comes with knowledge. When you understand what others overlook, you move differently. You check your change. You inspect old collections. You ask better questions. And suddenly, the world looks less random and more full of potential. That's not fantasy. That's how every great collector story begins. Not with riches, but with curiosity. So before you dismiss your spare change tonight, remember this. Some of the most valuable coins in America didn't start as treasures. They started as mistakes. Mistakes that slipped through systems, passed through hands, and waited patiently for someone to notice. The 1987 Washington quarter error is one of those moments frozen in metal. Whether you find one or not, the real shift happens when you stop assuming wealth is rare and start realizing it's often hidden. Imagine this for just a moment. You open a drawer. Inside it's quiet, ordinary, forgotten. And sitting there is a single Washington quarter, 1992, Denver Mint, something you've probably held 100 times without a second thought. Now let me ask you something that might sound almost ridiculous. What if that one coin was quietly worth more than most homes in America? What if it carried a six-figure secret that only a handful of people on Earth truly understand? Because right now, as you're watching this, collectors are paying attention, auctions are heating up, and certain 1992 Washington quarter-era coins have reached market values approaching $445,000. And the scariest part? Most people already owned one, and spent it. This is not fantasy. This is not luck. This is knowledge. And knowledge, when applied at the right moment, changes lifestyles. The truth is, wealth rarely announces itself loudly. It hides in plain sight. It disguises itself as ordinary. And in the world of rare U.S. coins, nothing proves that more powerfully than the 1992 Washington quarter with the right era characteristics. Before you dismiss this, ask yourself, how many quarters have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Now imagine realizing that one of them could have quietly rewritten your financial future. That's not excitement, that's urgency. In the early 1990s, the U.S. Mint in Denver was producing millions of Washington quarters at high speed, under enormous pressure. When speed increases, precision suffers. Dies cracked, planchets slipped, strikes doubled, metal flowed where it shouldn't. Most of these mistakes were caught. A few were not. And those few, those microscopic deviations from perfection, became legends. Certain 1992 quarters escaped the mint with dramatic errors, double dies so strong they appear almost three-dimensional, off-center strikes that still show full dates and mint marks, and rare transitional or die-state anomalies that collectors compete fiercely to own. These are not coins you negotiate over casually. These are coins that cause bidding wars. These are coins that disappear into vaults. Here's where fear quietly creeps in. Because every year, thousands of these coins are still being spent. Still being dumped into coin jars. Still being lost to coffee counters and vending machines. And every time that happens, the remaining supply shrinks. Scarcity increases. Demand explodes. Prices rise. That's how a coin goes from curiosity to six-figure asset. And here's the uncomfortable question, what if you already had one, and never looked closely enough? It's like owning beachfront property and never realizing the ocean was behind you. Now let's reset for a second, because this part matters. No, not every 1992 quarter is valuable. That's the joke most people make right before they miss the opportunity. Yeah right, my quarter isn't worth that. And most of the time, they're correct. But collectors don't pay for most of the time. They pay for the exception. They pay for precision. They pay for rarity verified by professional grading. And when a top-tier 1992 Washington quarter error appears, authenticated, preserved, and undeniable, the market responds aggressively. Because serious collectors aren't buying metal. They're buying history. They're buying exclusivity. They're buying something money alone cannot create. This is where excitement takes over. Because unlike stocks, unlike real estate, unlike businesses that require massive capital, this world allows entry through awareness. Through attention. Through simply knowing what to look for. That's why so many people over 30, people who grew up handling real coins, not digital wallets, are suddenly re-examining what they already own. And when they find something real, something rare, something demanded by the market, it doesn't just feel profitable. It feels empowering. It feels like reclaiming control, and here's the connecting truth that ties everything together. Coins like the 1992 Washington quarter error are not rising in value because of hype. They rise because supply is permanently fixed, demand is global, and trust is established through third-party grading and transparent auction records. Wealth flows toward certainty. And certified rare coins offer exactly that. That's why high-end collectors, investors, and legacy builders quietly compete behind the scenes. That's why prices don't fall, they consolidate, then climb. And that's why hesitation is the only real enemy here. So before this video ends, before the moment passes, before another coin disappears unnoticed, ask yourself one final question. Are you willing to let potential wealth sit unseen because it looks ordinary? Or are you willing to look closer, act smarter, and position yourself where demand already exists? Because opportunities like this don't knock loudly. They whisper. And only those who listen early ever hear the sound of money calling. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a simple Washington quarter is sitting in a jar, a drawer, maybe even in your own pocket, quietly hiding a story that could change a life. No fireworks. No alarms. Just 25 cents carrying a secret so powerful that collectors whisper numbers most people would laugh at, until they see the proof. What if I told you the 1994 Washington quarter isn't just spare change, but one of the most hunted modern coin errors in US history? And what if the very thing you've ignored for decades is the reason someone else retires early? Stay with me, because this story connects in a way most people never see until it's too late. Act 1 begins with comfort. The comfort of routine. We trust coins because they look familiar. Washington's face. The eagle on the back. We assume value is fixed, boring, predictable. A quarter is a quarter. That belief is exactly what creates opportunity for those who know better. In 1994, at the Denver Mint, millions of Washington quarters rolled off the presses. But here's the uncomfortable truth no one tells you: when machines run fast, mistakes happen. Dies crack. Pressures misalign. Metal behaves unpredictably. And when errors slip past quality control, they don't announce themselves. They hide in plain sight. Ask yourself honestly, how many quarters have passed through your hands since 1994 without a second glance? Be careful with that answer. Now here's where excitement creeps in. Certain 1994 Washington quarters show dramatic mint errors that were never meant to exist. We're talking about striking anomalies so bold that seasoned collectors stop breathing for a second when they see them. Off-center strikes that look almost impossible. Die breaks that distort Washington's portrait like time itself bent the metal. Doubled elements so strong they don't need a microscope. These are not weak errors. These are loud, undeniable mistakes. And when one surfaces in pristine or near-perfect condition, demand ignites fast. The kind of demand that turns ordinary people into very attentive listeners. The kind that makes auction rooms suddenly very quiet. And yes, figures as high as the mid-six-figure range, with whispers of values reaching around $475,000, have circulated through collector circles for the most extreme examples. That number alone should reset your attention. If it didn't, blink. Now you're back. Act 2 is where fear enters, and it's a productive fear. The fear of missing out. The fear that you already had one and spent it. The fear that someone else knows what you don't. Because here's the connection most people never make: the same mindset that ignores rare quarters ignores rare pennies too. The same jar that hides a valuable 1994 quarter often hides wheat cents, double dies, and transitional errors worth serious money. This isn't about luck. It's about awareness. Collectors aren't smarter than you. They're simply trained to look twice. And the market rewards that habit aggressively. When a verified 1994 error quarter hits the market, collectors don't hesitate. They move with urgency because they know something most of the public doesn't: supply is fixed forever, and demand keeps aging upward with wealth. Let's interrupt for a second with a simple question, and be honest. If you found out today that you once spent a coin worth more than your house, would you laugh, or would it haunt you? Exactly. That emotional reaction is why this matters. Because these coins don't come with warning labels. The market doesn't send reminders. And once a rare error disappears into a private collection, it may not resurface for decades, if ever. That's not hype. That's how scarcity works. Act 3 is about transformation, and this is where everything connects. The 1994 Washington quarter represents more than a payday. It represents a shift in mindset. From spender to observer. From consumer to owner. From someone who lets value slip through their fingers to someone who recognizes it before the crowd does. High net worth collectors aren't chasing these coins for nostalgia. They're acquiring tangible, historical assets with proven demand. Assets that don't rely on interest rates or stock market moods. That's why competition is intense, prices escalate fast, and hesitation costs money, and here's the positive truth that empowers instead of scares you. You don't need to buy expensive coins to enter this world. Many people who cash in big start exactly where you are now. With circulation coins. With curiosity. With a decision to stop assuming and start verifying. The same attention that uncovers a rare 1994 D quarter can uncover pennies worth 5, 6, even 7 figures in legendary cases. Wealth in numismatics doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself only to those willing to look. So before you dismiss your change tonight, pause. Before you dump that jar tomorrow, slow down. Because somewhere between fear and excitement lies opportunity. And opportunity favors the prepared eye. If this video planted even a sliver of doubt about what you've been overlooking, that's a good thing. Doubt leads to inspection. Inspection leads to discovery. And discovery, well, discovery is how ordinary people step quietly into extraordinary outcomes. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a quarter is sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, or a forgotten coin roll. It doesn't look special. It doesn't scream wealth. And yet, it carries a potential value of up to $435,000. The uncomfortable truth is this: most people would spend it without a second thought. Would you? Or would you recognize it before it disappears forever? Because today, we're revealing the story of the 1995 D Washington $quarter error, a modern American coin that has shocked collectors, stunned auction houses, and quietly created life-changing wealth for those who knew what to look for. Stay with me, because missing this could cost you more than money, it could cost you opportunity. This story begins in a year most people remember clearly. 1995, the US economy was changing, technology was accelerating, and millions of Washington quarters were pouring out of the Denver Mint. They were meant to be ordinary. Spendable. Replaceable. But history has a funny way of rewarding imperfections. In the chaos of mass production, something went wrong. A mistake slipped through quality control. Not once, not twice, but just enough times to create one of the most sought-after modern quarter errors ever discovered. And here's the part that should make you lean closer to the screen. These coins were released into circulation. No warning. No announcement. No recall. They blended perfectly into everyday life, where many of them remain hidden to this very day. Now, let me ask you something slightly uncomfortable. How many quarters have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? How many did you actually look at? Exactly. And that's why this matters. The 1995 D Washington quarter error is valuable not because it's old, but because it's rare, dramatic, and visually undeniable to the trained eye. Certain examples show extreme mint errors such as dramatic off-center strikes, doubled die features, missing clad layers, or striking anomalies that make professional graders stop and stare. These are not, maybe, errors. These are the kinds of coins that make auction rooms go silent before bidding explodes. And yes, authenticated high-grade examples have reached values approaching $435,000, driven by intense demand from elite collectors who understand one simple truth: opportunities like this do not repeat. At this point, some people laugh and say, it's just a quarter. And that's exactly why others get rich. Humor me for a second. If someone handed you a lottery ticket and said, this could be worth nearly $500,000, but you have to look at the numbers, would you throw it away without checking? Of course not. Yet people do exactly that with rare coins every single day. The fear isn't that you don't own one of these quarters. The fear is that you might have already owned one, and never knew it. That feeling right there. That slight tightening in your chest. That's awareness waking up. And awareness is the first step toward wealth. As word spread quietly through the coin collecting world, demand for the 1995 Washington quarter era began to rise. Serious collectors don't chase hype. They chase scarcity. They chase coins with documented minting anomalies, limited surviving examples, and strong grading histories. This quarter checks every box. And because it's modern, because it doesn't look ancient or fragile, it's often overlooked by the very people who could benefit the most. That irony fuels urgency. Because once a coin like this becomes widely recognized, the supply doesn't increase. It vanishes into private vaults, long-term collections, and high-end portfolios. Prices don't come down. They move up, quietly and decisively. Let's pause for a moment and reset your attention with a simple question. What would you do if a single coin paid off your mortgage? Or funded your retirement? Or gave you the freedom to live life on your terms? Sounds dramatic, doesn't it? But dramatic doesn't mean impossible. It means unlikely for those who don't pay attention. Wealth has always rewarded those who notice what others ignore. And the US coin market is one of the last places where everyday people can still stumble into extraordinary value without needing insider connections or massive capital. As we move deeper into this story, something important happens. You stop seeing coins as spare change and start seeing them as assets. The 1995 Washington quarter era becomes a symbol of a larger truth. America's pockets, jars, and drawers still hold undiscovered value. The fear of missing out isn't hype here. It's math. There are fewer verified high-grade era quarters than there are people actively searching for them. That imbalance creates pressure. Pressure creates demand. Demand creates rising prices. And rising prices reward those who act early, decisively, and confidently. Now here's where excitement takes over. Professional grading services exist for one reason: to separate ordinary coins from extraordinary ones. If you believe you found a 1995 quarter with a legitimate mint error, authentication becomes your gateway. Once certified, that coin enters a completely different world. A world of auctions, private buyers, and collectors who don't negotiate emotionally. They compete. And competition is where values soar. This isn't theory. It's already happening. And it's happening quietly, behind the scenes, while most people are still arguing about whether coins are worth anything at all. Let me say this with authority and clarity. The people who build wealth through collectibles don't wait for permission. They educate themselves, they act, and they move before the crowd catches up. The 1995 Washington quarter era is not a fantasy coin. It's documented, demanded, and desired. And every year that passes without more discoveries only tightens the market further. Time, in this case, is not neutral. It is either working for you, or against you. So here we are at the final act of this story, and it's no longer about a quarter. It's about mindset. It's about seeing opportunity where others see noise. Somewhere, right now, someone is unknowingly holding a coin that could change their financial future. The question is no longer whether these coins exist. They do. The question is whether you'll be one of the few who looks closely enough to recognize one before it's gone forever. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding an ordinary coin. Not gold. Not silver bars. Just a simple Washington quarter you may have ignored for years. It sits quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even in your pocket right now. And yet, what if that coin carried the power to change your financial future forever? What if one overlooked detail, one tiny mint mark, one silent error turned a 25-cent piece into nearly $500,000? Stay with me, because today we are uncovering one of the most shocking modern coin discoveries in U.S. history, the 1997 Washington quarter era coin, a coin that has stunned collectors, ignited bidding wars, and reached an astonishing market value of $485,000. Yes, you heard that right. And the scariest part? Most people have already spent this coin without ever knowing what they had. Let's pause for a second. Be honest with yourself. When was the last time you actually looked at your change? Not glanced at it, but really looked. Because fear doesn't come from what we know, it comes from what we ignore. And millions of Americans unknowingly ignore rare coins every single day. The 1997 D Washington quarter looks harmless, ordinary, forgettable. That's exactly why it's dangerous to overlook. This coin was minted in Denver, produced in massive quantities, and circulated widely across the United States. It blended in perfectly. But within that sea of normal quarters, a handful were born different. And those differences are now rewriting financial destinies. Here's where excitement begins to replace fear. These error coins were never meant to exist. They slipped through the system unnoticed by the US Mint, carrying flaws so rare and so dramatic that today they are considered elite artifacts in the numismatic world. We're talking about striking errors, off-center impressions, double dies, planchet mistakes, and rare transitional anomalies that only the sharpest collectors can identify. These are not beginner coins. These are high-stakes, high-demand assets pursued by serious money. And when one appears at auction, the room changes. Breathing slows. Bidding accelerates. Because everyone knows this truth, another one may not surface for years. Now let me ask you something, and don't answer too quickly. What if the reason wealth feels out of reach isn't because it's unavailable, but because it's disguised? That's the joke of the universe, isn't it? Opportunity rarely arrives wearing a crown. Sometimes it arrives disguised as spare change. And the 1997 D Washington quarter is the perfect example. People laughed at coin collectors once. Why save change, they said. Well, those same people are not laughing when a quarter sells for nearly $500,000. Funny how silence replaces laughter when money speaks. This brings us into the heart of the story. Act 2. The Awakening. As collectors began studying error patterns in late 1990s quarters, something unusual emerged. A microscopic population of 1997 D quarters displayed anomalies so extreme they challenged minting standards of the era. These weren't minor imperfections. These were dramatic production failures that could not be replicated. When verified by professional grading services, these coins entered a completely different universe of value. Suddenly, a quarter was no longer currency, it was a trophy. And in today's market, trophies don't sit on shelves. They move through private deals, high-profile auctions, and elite collector networks with one goal: ownership. Let's interrupt the intensity for a second. Quick question. If someone offered you a quarter right now and said, "This could be worth $485,000, would you laugh, or would your heart skip a beat?" Exactly. Because deep down, you already know the answer. You'd look twice. And that's the difference between those who stay comfortable and those who step into extraordinary opportunity. The demand for rare US error coins has never been stronger. High net worth collectors are shifting away from volatile markets and into tangible assets. Coins like the 1997 D Washington quarter era represent stability, scarcity, and legacy wealth. There will never be more of them. Demand grows. Supply does not. That imbalance is where serious money is made. And the urgency is real. Each year, fewer undiscovered examples remain. They're being found, graded, locked away, or sold into private collections. Once that happens, the window closes quietly. Now we enter Act 3. Resolution. This is where everything comes together. This is not just a story about a coin. It's a story about awareness, timing, and courage. The people who profit from rare coins aren't gamblers. They are observers. They pay attention. They understand that history leaves clues, and wealth rewards those who recognize them early. Somewhere in America, right now, a 1997 D Washington quarter error still sits unnoticed. Maybe in a box. Maybe in an old collection. Maybe passed down and forgotten. And one day, someone will look closer, and their life will change. Here's the powerful truth. You don't need millions to start. You need curiosity. You need knowledge. You need to stop underestimating what you already own. Because the next great financial surprise is rarely something new, it's something overlooked. The market has already spoken. $485,000 is not speculation. It's validation. It's proof. And it's a warning to anyone still ignoring their coins. So before you dismiss your change tonight, ask yourself this. What if the coin you're about to spend is the one collectors are desperately searching for? What if wealth is already in your hands, waiting for you to recognize it? Because the difference between regret and reward is often just one closer look. And in the world of rare coins, hesitation doesn't just cost time, it costs fortune.